Today's episode is brought to you by Manscaped, #1 in men's below-the-belt grooming and hygiene. Now listen, men, we all know that using the wrong tools will make any job more difficult, but using the right tool, now that can make the job a whole lot less hairy. So whether you need to mow the lawn, trim the hedges, or hell, I don't know, sculpt your own topiary, Manscaped is the right tool made specifically for this job. And right now you can get a whopping 25% off your order when you use the code PewterCast at checkout. That's manscaped.com. Use the code PewterCast to save 25%. And a special thanks to Manscaped for sponsoring today's show. Welcome to the PewterCast. This is our off-season tour. My name is Brent Allen, and I'll be your host tonight. And if I sound a little loopy, it's because I'm on some pretty gnarly medication right now. But thankfully, you don't have to listen to just me, because with me, as always, is a man who likes to send apparently really long, rambling emails in late just to avoid coaches speak from someone who isn't really even a coach. Ren Dext. Ren, how's it going, my friend?
Always got something, always got a surprise for me at the opening. I am not on drugs, but, I will be loopy anyway because that's closer to my personality type. Yeah, I wanted to sort of what Brent's referring to is I was trying to send an email into Rick Stroud for his podcast because it was basically their mailbag day or one of their mailbag episodes.
Which, by the way, in podcast world is we don't have anything else to talk about. That's what that means.
Yeah, exactly. It's like hey,
we don't know what to talk about.
We've talked about everything. What would you guys like to talk about? So I sent him a tweet like, does Sports Day Tampa Bay have an email address? And I just assumed, which was stupid, that Rick Stroud would understand that I understand that Twitter only has 280 characters, and that if I want to get a question to him, I could just tweet it. And he's come back, no, just tweet it. And I'm like, okay. It took me a long time to sort of compose that tweet because I was like, am I going to be snarky? Like, okay, Chief, this is not my first time on Twitter. I understand how it works. Like, blah, 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 blah. I have my own podcast. Like, just give me a freaking email address. But I didn't. I was like, oh, okay. All right. Well, and I forget how I phrased it. And then he came back with like, really? More than 280 characters? Really? And I'm like, yeah, really. Just like, and he gave me an email address, and it was late. It was probably about 9:30 by the time I sat down at the computer and started to compose it. And I did the first thing. I typed it all out, trying the best I can to sort of edit in my head and keep my thoughts straight. Mm-hmm. And then I reread it, and I'm like, oh God. I'm like, this is just a rambling mess. And after I gave him so much guff, I could not send in like this incoherent, no train of thought, like you could actually follow email. So I had to Twitter or tweet at him or quote him actually again and say, well, my email's a hot mess. Maybe next time. So that is what Brent is talking about. But
so here's my question, though.
Yeah.
What was the actual question that you wanted to ask him?
Well, actually, what it ended up being was what we're gonna talk about tonight at one point, which is going to be the new anthem policy. Okay. But when I sat down, I started. It was going to be the Gerald McCoy thing because he'd been going back and forth with people on Twitter for like 2-3 days about Gerald McCoy, and and there was just some thoughts I had, but right when I opened it and started it, I had an epiphany, but I didn't obviously formulate it very well. That I'm like, wait a minute, I want to get Rick Stroud's opinion on this issue because I feel like I'm coming down on the wrong side of popular opinion. And by popular opinion, I mean my Twitter timeline. That's how I judge how America feels about things. Whatever pops up on my Twitter timeline, because the people I follow,
all of America.
Right. Yeah. It's like whoever I follow, whoever they retweet or whoever I follow likes something, that's my poll. That's my group of people that I poll and how people feel about it. But like I said, we'll get into that. Yeah. So it ended up being about the anthem. But he did actually do like a 10-minute, little, I wouldn't call it a rant, but it was on his pod about Gerald McCoy and understand all the hate and blah, blah, blah. And then at the very end, I was just going to let it lie, but at the very end, he goes, you got to come out with a better argument than that. So I feel like sort of the challenge, the gauntlet has been thrown.
Slapped
Bugs
you
Bunny
across the face with a glove.
Yes. Yeah. With the brick in it, like, oh, pow, pow! And I'm like, okay. I know he wasn't talking to me personally because he had no idea what my emails would be about. But I'm like, okay. And basically, I have a couple of new tweaks to the episode we did about Gerald McCoy and leadership and leading from the second chair.
Months ago.
Yeah. When we did like our big thing, like it was basically like, I'll recap it real quick. We said, and I said that. I like Gerald McCoy. I like, he's a great player. I want him on the team. It's not his fault that the Bucs lose. Not this. But as far as like we think it's time that someone else should sort of be the face of the defense.
Mm-hmm. It'd be fair to say we said that.
Yeah,
it's fair to say we said that. Yeah.
So that was like sort of overall encompassing thing. And then I think like a couple days later, or that same week, or maybe a week later. It was like a couple days later. Then Scott Reynolds from Pewter Report did his Fab Five on the exact same subject.
Yep.
Yeah, and
we did it first though.
We did do it first, but
he has a few more followers though.
Yeah, by like 48 hours we did it first. Yeah. But and he sort of echoed what we were saying, and then Gerald got a little butthurt about it and blah blah blah. But so I've sort of tweaked my opinion about why people get down on McCoy, and I really don't think it's about him being a bad player, and anyway, you'll have to hear it and read it later.
It'll be interesting.
It'll be interesting. It'll be interesting.
Before we get in, and as you said, Ren, we'll get into talking about the anthem because it's been a few weeks since our last episode released, and there's actually been a lot that has been happening over at One Buc in the last couple of weeks, really, since the draft. Going on almost about 4 weeks, really, now since the draft. And so for this episode, we're really going to go back and kind of catch up on all the news and the gossip, and the way we do that is we kind of model this after our Buc in the News show that we do during the regular season. So there's lots of stuff to get into, but before we do that, Ren, I just want to give a quick plug and just let people know, hey, listen, if you want to support the show, if you like what we're doing here at the PewterCast, head over to patreon.com/ThePewterCast, where you can sign up to make a small monthly recurring donation to the show. And if you do that, you're going to get some pretty cool kickbacks. And there's lots of different things that you can get. One of the things is you can actually get to go to a home game this year with me, which would be super cool. So
or me.
No,
that's not true. No, it's not.
If I can't go, I'll send you. But it could be.
Yikes.
Could be. But listen.
I think I just got drafted.
There you go. Check us out at patreon.com/ThePewterCast. Our first goal, the first thing we're going to do is we're finally going to get our website launched and built. I could go out there and we could just kind of hacky put something together and just throw something up, but I'm not trying to do that. We want to do it well. So that's really the first goal of what we're trying to do with where we're going with all that. So you guys do that. Patreon.com/ThePewterCast. That out of the way, Ren, let's get into this. The first thing that we always start with our Buc in the News show, and there's actually been quite a few to talk about here, is we talk about team transactions. Now, where we kind of last left off was the draft, and then we signed up a whole bunch of undrafted free agents. But since then, there's been a few things. Namely, they had rookie minicamp, and coming out of rookie minicamp, they actually signed two of the tryout players, Mark Myers and Reuben Holcomb. One is a cornerback and one is a guard, and in doing so, they released Antonio Simmons, who was a linebacker, and then Devin Lucian, who's a wide receiver. They also have released Josh Little and signed wide receiver Thomas Spurback, and then eventually waived him due to injury. Ren, what have you heard about these two? The two guys that really jump out to me are the guys from the tryout period that knocked off a couple of the guys that we actually went out and signed. Mark Myers and Reuben Holcomb. Do you know anything about these guys?
Absolutely nothing.
Just enough that they impressed, apparently.
Yeah, and this seems sort of to be the prevailing attitude around at least the beat writers around Tampa Bay, and you hear their podcasts or read their articles, is like, it's like, hey, this guy flashed. It's early. And I think they're feeling what us fans are feeling, as in, we were all in last year. We all drank the Kool-Aid, and now it's like, no one wants to say, like, put their stamp of approval on not even, of course, like wins and losses and where the Bucs are going to be in playoffs or not, but even just like what they see in underwear football. It's just like, okay, yeah, you look good, but let's just wait. And years past, when Jason Light was building this roster, it seemed like, it was like Kenny Bell. Remember that, like 3-4 years ago? Oh my God, Kenny Bell, what a great draft! He looks great in OTAs, and then he'd disappear. So there's always seemed this one guy who they talked about, but everyone seems very cautious. So I'm sort of taking the same thing with Myers and Holcomb. Kudos to them. Congratulations for making the 9-man roster. And as long as they don't get injured, it looks like they're going to, make it into training camp, get out of OTAs and make it into training camp. But, but that's when the rubber really meets the road. 3 or 4 days into training camp, they finally go full pads, and then we'll see where we are from there.
And, talking about going full pads, though, from all indications, one of the biggest criticisms that the Buccaneers had from last year was a rather soft training camp. And as you said, it wasn't so much about being soft for them last year. The point was being make it through training camp uninjured and get to the season.
Right. That was the goal.
Seems like they're going to follow that same path this year. Now we'll wait and see what really happens when we get there. But it seems like, if you're hoping to see a rough and tumble training camp this year, I wouldn't hold my breath for that.
I think it's going to be more physical, but no tackling to the ground. I guess the Steelers are pretty notorious. Like when people talk about tough training camps or hard training camps, the Steelers always pop up because they've been tackling to the ground ever since Mike Tomlin got there. So there's probably not going to be any of that. But I was honestly, last year when I went and did the Wren's Diaries, it was there every day and put out, a little 45-minute pod every day, talking about what I saw, or some fun stories in there and who's playing where and who's ahead of who on the depth chart. There was no goal line. I think they did goal line offense and defense like twice out of like the 15, 16, 20 days I was there. But there was no they might as well not have had pads on.
Right.
And that was, if you thought they were actually going to, go at it full speed at any drill, this was going to be it. And they barely did it, and they didn't even do it in that. So I, for one, understand what Dirk Sutter's doing about trying to get everyone healthy for week one. I get it. But then again, everyone's going to get injured. Well, not everyone, but injuries are going to happen eventually. It's part of the game. Yeah. And, it seems to be that the prevailing issue that Jason Light saw on the defense and maybe even the offensive line was they're soft. And he went out and got guys that were just opposite that. So just because of the personalities there, even though they won't tackle to the ground, I think it's going to be a lot chippier, a lot more contact. I mean, I remember one time Quan came over and gave Jerry McNichols like a they call it the thud hit or the pro pop. And McNichols went to the ground, and that was a talk like, woo! Right. He didn't even wrap up or anything. He just hit him with the shoulder, and McNichols fell over, and that was like, wow! It's like, yeah, let's get him. And it was just like, and then you look back on it, it's like, wow, that was
nothing. Right. They may not go full force in tackling, but I think Scott Reynolds pointed this out on one of their podcasts here recently over at Pewter Nation Podcast. Watching the way I think it was Brinson Buckner specifically, and we'll talk more about him a little bit later in the show. But some of the drills and stuff he's putting into these guys, the hitting is there's a bit about just getting your body ready to take the hits, getting your body used to it, and there are things you can do to toughen up your body that will get you ready to be hitting. That is not actually just hitting. And, I think of, some of you hear like these Buddhist monks or whatever that basically go out and punch a tree for 20 hours and all of a sudden their fists are like sharp, like heavy as iron. Like you can't do anything to their fist just because they've been punched in a tree or something weird. Like something weird like that.
Wasn't that a Jean-Claude Van Damme movie?
It might. I don't know.
No, Steven Seagal.
Steven Seagal. I don't know. Whatever. But
I know what you're going with.
You know what I'm saying?
You build up like a pig.
Yeah, things you can do to toughen you up that aren't the other side of it that's going to, set you down for the year. So,
right.
If we're not going to get the one, at least hopefully we get the other, and we'll see what happens. There is one name on the transaction report I did want to bring up before we move on.
Is it Cole Gardner? Did they release him?
No, he's still on the team. But back,
did you hear Dirk Cutter actually mention his name by name in an interview?
Did he say it like real soft and draw out his name?
No, he didn't go Cole Gardner. But he was like, yeah, Cole Gardner, he's getting work in there because, somebody we liked last year want to get a look at. And I was just like, you mentioned that guy's name on camera. Dirk Cutter.
It's the new he who shall not be named.
Et tu, Dirk A. Et tu.
Et tu, Dirk A. But no, back with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers as of about a week ago now, actually. Mm-hmm. Bernard Reedy.
Oh, that's right. Speedy Reedy's back.
Yeah.
Right.
Back from getting a Super Bowl ring.
Yeah.
Did he actually get one? Because he was on the Patriots. No, they lost. He lost. Almost got a Super Bowl ring.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I guess you have to win.
Yeah, you have to win.
We're so used to Patriots winning. Oh, yeah. It was a Patriot. Of course he's got a ring. Right. Everyone's got a ring.
That's what you do, right? You leave the Buccaneers and you go to the Patriots and get a ring.
Yeah, leave any team. You play for the Patriots for one season, you got a ring, right? Don't you? Yeah. No, he doesn't have a ring. He has an AFC Championship ring, if they do that. I don't know if they do that. But anyway, he's back. It was there's some new kickoff rules, which, people talk about, and I don't think it's going to change anything one little bit. Mm-hmm. So, they like Reedy, he knows the offense, and he can help you maybe in the punt return game, because I think finally you've heard me say in past pods that Dirk Cutter doesn't care about sort of like yards after the catch on kickoff and punt returns. He's just like, just secure the ball, whatever you get, mm-hmm. and just let my offense get out there. Right. We'll take care of the scoring guys. Like there hasn't put a lot of emphasis put on like action, and that's I could be totally wrong, but it looks like to me that as long as they catch the ball, Cutter's more than happy. Like he's content with that. But I feel like they're going to get after it a little bit this year as far as returning punts and kicks. They're going to do more of a focus, not only of course catching, securing the ball, but they're actually going to try some things. After the guy catches the ball, then everyone doesn't start to gear down. It's that's when everyone will start to gear up.
There you go. Speedy Reedy. Back with the Buccaneers. I'd almost say back where he belongs, but does he really? We keep trying to upgrade it. He's another one of those players. We keep trying to upgrade, but he keeps coming back. So we'll see what happens. All right. Well, one more thing just to note before we move on, in case anyone cares. As of this recording, as far as I can tell, 7 of our 8 draft picks have actually officially signed their contracts now. Vita Vea was the most recent one, not quite the final one, but he is finally under contract. The only one that's left out there is Ronald Jones, so we'll get him taken care of. That's not going to be an issue. It's just a matter of timing. I know I saw some people out there were kind of mad that we didn't sign Vita Vea first to the contract.
What?
Yeah, why? Exactly. Thus, I'm bringing this up. Why? The other guys are super easy. Those guys in the earlier rounds, they have more negotiating room and negotiating power, I guess.
Right, yeah, they have a little more wiggle room on what they can earn and language in the contract and things like that.
Mm-hmm. I'd be interested to know what actually like changes in these contracts, because on some level, you're just like, hey, here's a standard NFL contract. Sign it if you want to play in this league.
Well, it's in the CBA. Right. I mean, where you're drafted, and it's not just which round. It's because they really don't think of that. It's what number you were selected.
Right.
And as the number gets more and more digits into it and higher, the wiggle room, like I said, as far as you can negotiate your price and value and language in the contract, gets smaller and smaller. So. I'm sure you can find it somewhere and look it up. I'm also sure it's incredibly complex and filled with tons of legalese.
Right, which I have no desire to go read.
Exactly.
It's one of those I would rather know what it says rather than do the work of getting to know what it says, if you know what I'm saying. All right, well, enough with all of that. Let's move on to some of the headlines, some of the gossip, some of the fun stories, I guess, that have come out of One Buc. And as always, Ren, we start with the quarterback. And the biggest thing, I guess, coming out as far as this is Jameis Winston. We all know earlier this summer they announced that he and his longtime girlfriend, Nicole Buc'N, I think I'm saying her name correctly, that they're expecting a little baby boy, which is very cool. Mm-hmm. And they have now actually taken the next step, and they're engaged. So congratulations to Jameis and his fiancée.
Yeah, congratulations to them. I heard that her response was about time. That was her.
To be honest, response. That was my response too. If I'm being frank.
Yeah, well. I get. I'm not really a person who sort of delves into off-field things about family and stuff. Mm-hmm. Now, of course, Joe Hawley doesn't play for the Bucs anymore, but I'm following him traveling around. Apparently, Jensen likes to cook, and he uses really nice ingredients. So that's something that interests me. But as far as like people's families, wives, what's going on, their kids, like none of that stuff. First of all, I just don't think it's any of my business. So, mm-hmm. But I do remember in Hard Knocks hearing that they've known each other, and I don't know if they dated through college, but they started dating in high school. So with that response is you can see what she was talking about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Brienne. I think Brienne Nicole actually is her name. I think I had it backwards. Anyway, yeah, it's about time. But congratulations to those two. The only criticism, Red, that I think I really can have is first of all, did you see the engagement photos? Because they were all over social media.
I saw a few.
Yeah.
I mean, once again, like I didn't go hunt for them.
Yeah. So this happened in like late April, early May. Let's go ahead and say May, right? Mm-hmm. Jameis Winston is wearing the
Bugs Bunny sweater.
No, yes. No, it wasn't like Kermit the Frog, Bugs Bunny. I think
it was Bugs Bunny.
He's wearing a Bugs Bunny sweater.
Yeah.
Getting engaged. Like, dude, come on. And it's a sweater. Like, I understand.
You don't know where he was. Obviously, they got on a plane and went somewhere.
I think they were in New York. Is what I understand. But still, I was like, dude,
Bugs Bunny's big in New York, man. He runs that town.
Dude, he makes a little bit of money. He could dress a little swaggier than that.
Well, let's face it. Jameis and fashion are not two things that go together. I mean, he still tucks his T-shirt into his shorts at practice. It's he's just he's a different cat when it comes to fashion.
Well, at least he's not Cam Newton.
I don't mind Cam's clothes actually.
Oh my.
Some of them I'm like, okay, that's a little too fashion forward for me. But I mean, Jameis tries. I think he looks good when he goes on road trips, but he's definitely not like the most modern, most hip, sharply dressed. Mm. There's always just something that's a little off, like maybe the color, or I don't know. There's always something,
or the cartoon character,
or the big Bugs Bunny sweater. Hey, what do you? Maybe she bought that for him for their anniversary or something. It might have some hidden meaning. It might not just be like
he was wearing on their first date. Saved it after all these years.
He's been the same size since high school.
He might be.
He might be. Who knows?
All right. Well, with that, once again, we'll say congratulations to Jameis and his lovely, lovely fiance. You guys are awesome. Let's get back to playing football.
All right, here we go.
Coming out recently, a lot of people already know this. This is not news, and Ren, as we often say, we don't report the news here at the PewterCast. We just talk about it. The Buccaneers have made their announcement for the 2018 inductee into the Ring of Honor, and with another, it's about time. Former coach
James Wilder,
Tony Dungy.
Oh,
although James Wilder, though, Ren,
that's about time. Talking about time.
I was watching a show. Was it the Good Morning Football? Might have been one of those, maybe, where they were talking about who should be the next person into the Ring of Honor. And one person kind of came up to the inside. I'm going to say a name that nobody ever talks about. And nobody ever, and it said James Wilder, and I'm like, haha, Ren talks about it often, every year about this time.
Every time they bring it up. Yeah, he was their offense, man. It was like run him first, second down, throw him on third. I mean, and like, if I don't mean to go on a rant, we'll talk about Tony Dungy, obviously, but I think he still leads the league, the team in history in like amount of receptions, like number of receptions,
and number of yards too,
and all purpose yards. Yeah, and I think he's like second or third in all-time rushing yards. So and he only played for him for like 6 years. It wasn't like it might have even less than that. So anyway, but congratulations to Tony Dungy. Obviously, he deserves it. I don't think there's an argument that if Tony Dungy didn't make the change that he did here in Tampa Bay, that we would not have won that Super Bowl.
Correct.
In 2002 without him. There's been two good periods in the history of Tampa Bay Buccaneers that you could sort of hang your hat on as a fan, and that's the 1979 season with John McKay, the one season, and then there is basically Tony Dungy's entire career as the head coach. So
followed by the 1 year after with John Gruden. That one
year.
And then after that, it's been
But I sort of like put those to. I kind of bleed them together. No, I'm not one of those people that like John Gruden won the Super Bowl with Tony Dungy's team. But I just sort of do see the Super Bowl team as sort of Tony Dungy's guys. It's and who knows if Tony Dungy ever would have won it if he was here. I believe probably not. We sort of have all these fond memories of Tony Dungy, but I was ready for him to go because of stubbornness on offense.
Yeah.
To not push down the field, to play it safe all the time, to not actually show some emotion on the field and get angry at the refs for screwing the team over on calls. So I put Tony Dungy as far as Buccaneer history of importance over John Gruden. And if John Gruden, let's say we lost that Super Bowl, then I would probably put John Gruden underneath John McKay as far as importance to the franchise. But Super Bowl carries a lot of weight because that's the gold medal, man.
Now you've just been talking about it. John McKay, John Gruden, Tony Dungy, in a franchise that has had a tumultuous time over the course of its 40-some-odd year history.
Right.
3 of our head coaches are in the Ring of Honor.
Right.
That seems like a lot to me.
That's a good point.
But I get each one of them. I understand each one. It just that seems like a lot given the history of this team.
Agreed. But when your history is, I think it's 47th, 48th year, as far as the Tampa Bay Buccaneers being in existence, I think it was like, 77 they came into existence?
No, 76.
76?
76. So this would be 42nd year?
42nd? Okay, yeah. 42nd. So you take away like the 8 years Tony Dungy was here. Half of Gruden's years weren't good, so we'll say 2 of Gruden's years because he did win the Super Bowl the first year. Or we'll give him 3. Okay. So 8 for Tony, 3 for John Gruden, and McKay will give 2. Okay. Because they had a pretty good team the following year after the 79 run, but it decimated by injuries and blah 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 blah. So where are we at? So we're at 11.
13. Yeah.
13.
13
so
total.
13 years. So that's
1.
Right at a 41. Okay. So now we're looking at 60% of their existence has been putrid. I mean, so when you just get a little bit of success and you're looking for people in the Ring of Honor,
right?
Yeah, if you were terrible, then your players were terrible, so you can't really grab those players. If you're terrible, your coaches are probably terrible, so you can't grab those coaches. I mean, is it a little too much for given our history and only how many years, only won 1 Super Bowl and so many wins, franchise wins? Yeah, you can make that argument, but
Mm-hmm.
you know, you got to find people somewhere. I mean, that's what they're doing.
Right.
The real question is, it's like, so after Rondé Barber, you know, I would say James Wilder, where do you go? You know, I know people like Simeon Rice, but I always see him in my head as a Bucs fan as a Cardinal, and he was more of a mercenary.
Mm-hmm. He's
not a Buccaneer to me.
Right. You bring up a really good point. And that was going to be one of the questions that I asked is who's next. But I do want to back up just for a second.
Yeah.
And talking about something you and I talked about a little bit last year in our show, talking about the Ring of Honor, where do you still believe this is true? We'd made mention that we don't really think that there's an overall master plan of who they're putting in to the Ring of Honor. Like, there's not much thought given to this guy first, this guy second, this guy third. You know, it's just like they're kind of making the decision year by year. And honestly, and this is not taking anything away from Coach Dungy, I don't think there's much. I think people are reading way too much into, Gruden got put in before Dungy, or this person before that person. I think people are just reading way too much into that, because honestly, once you get past Leroy Selman, it's all just like, he obviously should have been the first. John McKay, Leroy Selman will give those two guys first spot. After that, everybody's going to get their turn. I feel like this one was a little bit of a, if they kind of take it year by year, this one might have been more of a reaction against when they heard, John Gruden, and everybody saying, John Gruden shouldn't get in before Tony Dungy. So this is kind of them going back and making up for that a little bit. I feel like that might be a little bit of the case. And that's not to take anything away from Coach Dungy. I think he's very, very deserving of being in there.
Right.
But, I wonder if the timing of it is a little suspect to me. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I hear you. I don't think so. I mean, the way I look at it is, like, if you're going to weigh the two in a Ring of Honor, which one do you put in first? And I've gone on record, I just said it, like, I think Tony Dungy's above John Gruden as far as, like, as coaches for the Buccaneers. Like, I would rate Dungy first, then Gruden, then McKay, then who cares?
See,
seriously.
Now, even with that, though, I would agree with you. Tony Dungy was a better coach for the Buccaneers than John Gruden. I just don't know that you can, like, if you are putting it in by order, winning the Super Bowl to me trumps.
That's exactly what I was going to say. And I have absolutely no problem putting John Gruden in the Ring of Honor before Tony Dungy, because he has the only Super Bowl.
Right.
I mean, so if you want to read into it that it was a slap in the face to Tony Dungy, or the Grudens the Glazers are trying to patch up their relationship with John Gruden because it ended bad and had been bad for a few years after that,
and they want to bring him back as the next head coach.
Right, and like, I mean, that could have played into it too. You don't know. I mean, I find it. I know the Glazers have said that they didn't talk to John. Well, actually, they didn't say that. They just said there's lots of false information out there. John Gruden said that the Glazers never talked to him, but John Gruden's a liar, and we all know he is. He just is. When it comes to, like, answering questions about football and things like that, I'm not talking about hey, John, what are you doing? I'm eating cake. When he's, like, riding the lawnmower, he's not that type of liar. He just doesn't tell people. It's like, he doesn't think any of your business, or it's going to hurt his image or his brand. He'll lie to your face. So, but I don't think it's crazy to think that putting John in the Ring of Honor was sort of an olive branch to possibly down the road seeing if he wants to come back to Tampa. Did it happen? I mean, obviously it didn't happen, but did a conversation happen? Who knows? And quite frankly, who cares?
Right. Exactly.
It's over and done with. But here's the interesting thing. If John didn't go into the Ring of Honor last year, John, like, we're buddies, if Gruden did go in the Ring of Honor last year and he took the Oakland job this year, how long would it be? Because, I mean, I would have a problem putting John Gruden in the Ring of Honor while he's coaching another team. And he's got a 10-year contract with Oakland.
I'd have a problem putting Tony Dungy in while he's coaching another team.
But he has
got to wait till they retire, Right,
but I'm just saying it was sort of that perfect window for Gruden.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. But this isn't about Gruden. Tony Dungy is finally getting in.
That's right. We have totally glossed over him. He won't be mad.
Tony Dungy, all of this to say, very well deserving. Was it right that somebody got in over somebody else in order? I don't really think so. I don't think there's that much thought put into it, to be honest with you. But it does beg the question of who's next. You mentioned Rondé Barber. You've mentioned James Wilder. Let me throw out somebody who might potentially, not next year or even in 2 years, but who might potentially be a future Ring of Honor candidate. And just wanted to see what you want to say because he just officially retired from the NFL. Vincent Jackson. What do you think? Is this guy a future Ring of Honor guy?
No, he's not. And it just goes to be it, and it kind of goes back to the argument about the Hall of Fame. If you say the guy's name and you don't immediately go, "Oh yeah, he's a Hall of Famer," then he doesn't belong in the Hall of Fame. And it's the same thing kind of with Simeon Rice. Mm-hmm. Hardy Nickerson's not in the Ring of Honor, is he?
No, and I would venture to say he should be.
No, he shouldn't be.
You don't
he was
think
on
so?
Terrible teams. No, all he did was, he was a good player for us, but there were better players. I mean, he started the culture change.
Uh-huh.
But
there are some people, but
that shouldn't put you. That shouldn't put you in the Ring of Honor.
You got to ask what's the Ring of Honor about and what's it for?
It's not like he was the best player on the team for 4 years. Okay, but for those 4 years, the team went like 16-95.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't do anything. So I mean,
well, that doesn't bode well for future Gerald McCoy being in the Ring of Honor.
Well, he has 6 Pro Bowls.
That is true.
That is, but 6 Pro Bowls in 8 years, and his first 2 years he was injured.
What I'm saying about Hardy Nickerson, though, is the reports of people who played with him and were on the team with him and Tony Dungy is, in some cases, seems like he might have actually been more responsible for the culture change around Tampa Bay than even, say, Tony Dungy was, than even Warren Sapp was. At least he was that catalyst that got it all moving and got it started. So, when you think about the Ring of Honor and what this person meant to the organization, now I agree with you. I don't know that Vincent Jackson ever did enough as a Buccaneer to be really considered a Ring of Honor candidate.
Right.
That he's a fantastic human being. He's done a lot in Tampa Bay. He was a good player while he was here.
Right.
I agree with you. I don't know that he actually did enough as a Buck, although he is certainly worthy of honor. I just don't think he's going to be in that specific spot. Hardy Nickerson, on the other hand, from what I understand, and this was before my time as a Buccaneer fan, so I'll put that caveat. You were here before I was, Ren. You saw this more than I did. From what I understand, though, Hardy Nickerson really was that catalyst for changing the culture. And this, coming from, what's that guy? Oh, Ian Beckles. Yeah, sorry.
Right.
He talks about that, of how it really was Hardy Nickerson over or at least it spurred everybody else on. So I think you
and
could
that's
make
fair.
I think you have more of an argument for him over Vincent Jackson.
Oh yeah, if I had to put one in, it would definitely be Hardy Nickerson over Vincent Jackson. And like you said, it's nothing against Vincent Jackson. All the things you said are correct. He's a fantastic human being. He's been great in the community. He's still. It seems like he's going to stay in the community. He has a business in the community. He's very involved in the military. Always giving his time. I believe he has a foundation. Was always the Buccaneers military man of the year.
Right.
Always in there. So
he was the Walter Payton man of the year candidate every year that he was here.
Right. Yeah. And also he was one of our best free agents ever. But once again, it's a very shallow pool of when you talk about, it's like him and Hardy Nickerson and who?
I don't know.
Simeon Rice.
I don't know.
Name another one.
I'll give you one more name that I think he's not there yet, but if his career continues on the trajectory that it's going, he could eventually get there. Shelton Quarles.
No.
Because think about what he's meant to the organization as a whole, right? He was here for the team. He was could we say at bare minimum a decent player.
I think he made a Pro Bowl that year when the Bucs sent 11 guys. Let me look at that real quick.
Sure. And while you're looking that up, I'll bring out Shelton Quarles has turned around and come back. He's working for the team. He's part of the front office. He's currently the director of player personnel.
What does that mean?
It basically, he is the one who interacts with the players. So he is responsible for discussing he's like the liaison between the organization and the players themselves, and talking to the players. So
right. So he's a glorified assistant.
It also means that he is the head of the scouting department.
No, he's not.
That's my understanding, and I asked him about it. I got to meet him in one of those little, where they have the Buck Legends guys up there, and I asked him about it, and he said his words was he's not. He said Jason Light is in charge of the scouting department, but he's very, very involved, is what he told me. So
scouting director of pro scouting, but he doesn't do any scouting. I don't think. I think what he does is he arranges the schedules for the scouter. What am I retarded?
The way you say that there, he sounds a lot like a secretary. I'd say he's a little bit more than that. But
but not really. Honestly, I don't think he is. I could be dead wrong, but I don't.
And I'll say this because I've actually tried to figure this out.
He made the Pro Bowl in 2002.
There you go. Each team has a different definition of what these positions do. So it's hard to nail down exactly what he does for the Buccaneers. However, if he continues on this trajectory, I'm not saying that he's going to go on and become the GM someday, but it's in terms of what he's meant to the team as a whole, on the field and off the field. It's possible. I'm just saying it's possible. And if you're really begging for people, if you're coming up with a lack of people, that would be a future name that I wouldn't be overly shocked. But like I said, he hasn't earned it yet. If he keeps going, he may in the future.
Now, I get, if he may in the future, and I think he would have to climb the ladder a little more. Now, yes, he made a Pro Bowl, and yes, he was on the Super Bowl and a starter on the Super Bowl team, and he's, after that, I don't know if he's been with the Bucs his whole career, but I'm pretty sure, after his playing days, he's been with the Buccaneers. But he would have to climb a little higher than where he's at now to get into the Ring of Honor. Maybe he becomes a GM, and they do well under him. I'm trying to read his bio right now.
Awesome. I'll let you.
Okay,
do that.
Here it is.
Okay,
here it is. In the current role, Quarles works directly with the head coach and general manager in organizing day-to-day operations of the team. Yeah. He's the guy he's logistics guy. Hey, Shelton, get Bobo Wilson on the phone. Hey, Bobo. Oh, you're in Miami? Oh, okay. Hey, Jason, he's in Miami. Hey, Riley, can you come up and talk to Coach Cutter? He wants to talk to you.
Bobo
that's what Shelton. No, but that's what you saw him do on Hard Knocks was call players and tell them to come in, or he cut people.
He's the liaison between the players and the organization. He's that guy. He helps the players do it. Anyway, moving on. It's not that big of a deal.
That's true. That's true. Well, I get when I disagree.
I do.
If he moves up the chain and ladder, not that he wasn't or isn't a great Buccaneer as far as organization as a whole is, I thought he was a good player, and I'm sure he does very well at his job. But as far as Ring of Honor, once again, I'm falling back on you don't want it to be the ring of very, very good. And who says you have to put somebody in the Ring of Honor every year?
That's very true. And how many years if they put in 2 people in 1 year?
Yeah, exactly.
Might want to space that out a little bit more. So
I always thought about that. It's like, why are you putting 2? Because there's not really that many people left.
Right. And eventually you run out of room. So, they've got a lot of room up there right now, and they're only on one side of the stadium. They haven't even touched the other side yet. So they've still got plenty of room, but, you will eventually run out. There's only so much space. All right, moving on off of that. But Vincent Jackson retired. Yay for him. I think you might say, Ren, the league retired him.
Right. So, yeah, I like that. I got that from Scott Reynolds. I like that. Yeah. League retired him.
League retired him. All right. Speaking of somebody who is making an impact on the team, though, Brenson Buckner, brand new defensive line coach, the only coach that we changed up this year, as it were. Well, not the only coach. There were a few other moves But he was the only new one that we really brought in. We got to see a few videos of him coaching during rookie minicamp. Ren, I don't know if you got a chance to look at those. Fellow fans out there, if you haven't, go out there and find them. Look up, Greg Allman and the Pewter Report guys, and I don't know who else puts out videos. Jenna does, maybe?
It.
No, I don't think Jenna does.
Not much. It's usually those. That's about it.
The JBF guys don't. Roy Con, I don't. Yeah. Anyway, go look up some of their videos. They have them out there. But getting to, I remember watching one video of Brenson Buccaneer coaching Vita Vea and a couple of the other guys, and I sat back and thought, I think I just learned more about football, defensive line football, from this 45-second clip than I have in all these years of being a fan of football and, being in as we are these days.
Yeah. Yeah, he's sort of going to be the darling of OTAs and training camp because, like you said, he is the only new face. It's a new story, and he got plenty of coverage, when he got here, and I think it'll pick back up again with the stories and how he's doing and what he's doing different from years past, especially from Jay Hayes because he was the most recent, and the failures of his defensive line last year. So, it's not really tough love. It's do this. I don't care. It's like, I don't care who you are. I don't care what you did before. This is the way we're going to do it. And, I heard like a little snippet from someone that said, someone came up and did a drill and he corrected them and the person behind him did the exact same mistake the person in front of him. And he stops and he's like, hey guys, he's like, I'm not going to have to correct each and every one of you for the same mistake. Like once he did it, you're listening to what I'm saying. And when you get here, don't do what that, like I only have to correct one of you. Mm-hmm. That's correcting all of you because, it's just more of this. And it's almost like the polar opposite from Jay Hayes. So it's it's why everyone's sort of on this bus. It's like, it's sort of like the only tough coaching we've seen besides like when Dirk Cutter yelled at Jameis at the Jacksonville game.
Right.
Right. Mike Hayes isn't really a yeller and a scream. Well, I mean, we did see in the press box, he screamed his headset, but on the practice field, he's not.
About Mike Smith.
Yeah, Mike Smith, defensive coordinator. Yeah, so it's just sort of a different style, and I think fans feel that our defense was soft last year, and this is what they're hungering for. So now he's just like, you don't really know. His track record would say that what he's doing is the right thing to do, but so would Jay Hayes. So you don't really know how it's going to work out. But since it's so different, and the different thing failed miserably, it's like it sort of magnifies this glory, hallelujah, thank God, is what I've been waiting for my whole life type of coverage he's getting.
Well, and I think the other thing too is that like some of what we're seeing from Brenson Buccaneer is like even to you and me, like the yokel who doesn't do anything professionally with football would go, oh, that makes sense. Things like, hey, stop all this stunting and this spinning and this turning and going over here. Just go straight down the line. Like, just go forward. Like,
A to B.
Back the guy up. Just do that. And everybody's like, yes, thank you.
Thank you.
And so...
Well, Sapp used to say we tackled the ball to the carrier on the way to the quarterback.
There you go.
That was a run defense. Yeah, it's like, I'm going to the quarterback. If the ball carrier crosses my path, I'll tackle him.
Right. There you go. I like it. Keep it simple, stupid people. Keep it simple. So that should be interesting. Now, speaking of Brenson Buccaneer, let's broaden this out to all of the assistant coaches, Ren, because here just within the last couple of weeks, we kind of got the annual interviews with all the assistant coaches. We're not going to hear from them again for another year. So you got to watch all the videos. I won't say all of them. I watched most of them. But I'll toss it to you. Did anything stand out to you from the interviews with the different assistant coaches?
No. And this is kind of like why Brenson Buccaneer's the story, because it's sort of what we hear, what we've been hearing from these guys, even though we have to hear them, once a week, but, we hear kind things leak out and beat reporters do this. Like they'll ask questions of Mike Smith, and Mike Smith will talk about, will give his answer, and then you hear the same answer 6 months later coming out of his defensive assistants. Mm-hmm. So Britt Spector's only like the new voice. I mean, nothing really stood out. George Warhop still likes Donovan Smith. I mean, it's all the same stuff if you remember from last year. I guess the biggest story for me, besides Bishop Butler, would be Skylar Fulton,
he was
the new wide
receiver.
Yeah,
he's a fun guy to watch. Yeah,
that guy's got juice. And does that mean he's good at his job? Mm-hmm. No, but he's definitely going to give it his all. He has
too.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to be with a name like Skylar. So.
He was the guy, and if I don't, why? Oh, I guess I see kind of see what you're saying. He was the guy that, if you remember, when I was doing Ren's training camp diaries, mm-hmm. That sometimes I would get confused for Mike Evans.
Oh yeah, I remember you talking about that. Yeah,
like they both had a beard. I think he cut his beard, but they both had a beard. They both had tattoos on their arms. Same height, sort of the same pigment. So yeah, like every once in a while, I'm like, why is Mike Evans like? At the beginning, I'm like, oh, Mike Evans isn't dressed. Oh, never mind, that's the assistant wide receivers coach. I didn't know his name back then.
Right.
It was fun to listen to him, but those interviews have been out like a week or so. We're a little late to the game or that with those. But honestly, not really. It was just kind of like more of the same old. Mm-hmm. But once again, it just seems it does seem that there's a little more urgency in everyone's voice.
Yeah.
A little more. Everyone's a little raring to go. Last year, it was just sort of like kind of like ho hum, yeah, okay, blah 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 blah. And I think like everyone's sort of it. You don't want to say it's just because you think they're coaching for their jobs, mm-hmm. but it's hard to not make that correlation of the uptick of intensity that you feel and see, and hear around OTAs, because there's an obvious uptick in intensity across the board, and where did it come from? Mm-hmm. So
yeah, it was one of those, as you say, these interviews have been out for about a week and a half now, as we record this, and a lot of people have already talked about kind of the big talking points. Mike Smith saying that they're not going to build the defense around Gerald McCoy. Todd Monken saying we chose to suck. Brinson Buckner, going back to him, talking about he wants G-Mac to play from the head, and he doesn't care about double-digit sacks. He only cares about double-digit wins, which is the most glorious soundbite I think anybody could ever pull out. Like, that's amazing. Skylar Fulton was definitely a fun watch. I did have two notes, though, that came from our running backs coach, Tim Spencer, I wanted to bring up.
All right.
One of them concerns Jacquizz Rodgers. And what he said about him was that Jacquizz Rodgers is like having an extra coach on the field.
Mm-hmm.
Like that was he was like, yeah, he's a good player. He's fine. He's a good player. But it's really like he's like having an extra coach on the field, which, I don't know that bodes well for him making the team when you start getting down to, nitty gritty roster picks, spots when you have so many of those to go around. But
it helps in training camp.
And I mean, truth be told, you could almost say that that's why we had Joe Hawley on the team last year. Because we had Ali Marpet move into center. We needed somebody who could back him up just in case, but also he kind of needed a coach, like another player coach. So, we saw Joe Hawley. He was inactive, I think, through the first 10 games of the year last year. And then he finally he got to dress after some injuries happened and things, and he finished out the year. And
he got injured.
And then of course he retired and lost a bunch of weight, and now he's off living in a van with his dog. So I don't know. I thought that was real interesting. He's talking about Jacquizz Rodgers to just lend it to the idea that he's like having an extra coach. And that was about the best thing that he was saying about Jacquizz Rodgers. They like him. He's a good player. He's not lighting it up, but he'll
make do in a pinch.
Yeah.
He's Jacquizz Rodgers reminds me of besides, I think he's better in pass protection. At least understanding and where he's supposed to be, because there was a few times last year where Peyton Barber still messed it up, and that's been his sort of Achilles heel since he got into the league with the Buccaneers. But I see Jaquiz Rodgers it's like he's almost the same exact back as Peyton Barber running the ball, but with less explosiveness, which isn't good because Peyton Barber is not really that explosive.
But Peyton Barber's not going to lose you yards. Not to say Jaquiz Rodgers will.
No, Jaquiz Rodgers won't either.
Right. So yeah, I don't know. It should be interesting. All right. The other thing that he said, and this one actually kind of I think goes back and may not bode so well for Charles Sims, or maybe it may have no effect on him whatsoever. But he was talking about one of the undrafted free agents that they have on the team now, Sean White, and said I'm paraphrasing here. He says he's a good third down back like Charles Sims, but he's quick. And he's got a chip on his shoulder. It's like he's like Charles Sims, except he's quick. I was like, okay, that's maybe I know when they brought back in Charles Sims for near the league minimum, on a 1-year deal. It's
over it.
Not even a prove it deal. That doesn't even seem like it's a prove it deal. That's a
no. We're bringing you in before the draft so we don't get pigeonholed into picking somebody. Deal.
Yeah. So I know in our last episode we kind of did our way too early 53-man roster prediction / who we're going to be watching for in camp. I think this is another name actually throw into the let's watch this guy in camp and see, could this guy potentially beat out Jaquiz Rodgers? Or not Jaquiz Rodgers, but Charles Sims. The benefit of Charles Sims, he's got 5 years worth of or 4 years worth of experience, which speaks a lot, but that also means he doesn't have a lot left in the tank as far as running backs go, generally speaking.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing working against Charles Sims, after 4 years, you are what you are. He can't run between the tackles. He can't do it. Right. He was a little better last year. Oh, he was a little better last year, but once again, the bar was so low from the year before how bad he was between the tackles. It was like, it was your turn to shine. Here you go. It's let's do it. And he didn't. He felt like fell right on his face. So that's what Charles Sims is going to be. You get him in space, he'll make some plays, he'll break off some big runs if you give him the ball enough, and he might win you a game. But yeah, this kid out of Duke, Sean Wilson, it just might have more tools. And then once again, he's going to be a lot cheaper. And this is where you really have to start thinking about this.
Wait. He's going to be a lot cheaper than league minimum.
Yeah. He's going to be a lot cheaper than Charles Sims. Charles Sims is a league minimum for a 5-year vet.
Oh, okay.
It's not league minimum. Yeah, it's not league minimum what you're getting paid. Sean Wilson is Jesus. He's an undrafted free agent rookie contract. So who knows what that is? You looking that up?
I'm looking up what the league minimum for a 5-year vet is.
Gotcha. I'll do the other one. So, you have to start thinking that these are the decisions that are going to have to start coming into play. If we'll say we'll give them number grades. We'll say the Buccaneers staff give Charles Sims a number grade 85. And then they give Sean Wilson an undergrade. Sean White. Is it Sean White or Sean Wilson? I just got away. Sorry.
I have White on my notes, but it might be Wilson. I could.
It's Wilson. It's Wilson. You give Wilson an 81. Okay. Well, Charles Sims is number wise you like him better, but you could save money with bringing Wilson on the team. Then you can culture him, and he has a higher ceiling because you kind of know what Charles Sims is. And like I was saying, this is the time because we had all that money, but it's all been spent, and we got to find places. Yeah, we got to find places to sign Ali Marpet, sign Qual Alexander, sign Jameis Winston in 2 years. We got Donovan Smith you have to sign. Like, these guys are going to get nice payday contracts, and the money's got to come from somewhere. Most people think it's going to come from places like J.R. Sweezy, which is probably true. Maybe Deshaun Jackson next year. This maybe his last year in Tampa, which is probably true. So these are some of the things that the Buccaneers upstairs staff, scouting staff, is going to have to decide on. Is a 4-point difference, worth like $500,000 in salary?
Yeah, it should be. If anybody's interested, the league minimum for a 5-year vet is going to be between $745,000 to $790,000. Somewhere around, if I'm reading these numbers, no, about $790,000, so about $800,000 to just bring him back in.
I think they paid him. I think they paid him $1 million.
$1 million, yeah. Yeah. What's interesting, and they obviously, I would venture to say that they're probably not on the hook for that unless he makes it to the 53-man roster and on opening day, because the places that typically tell what these contracts are don't actually have his 2018 contract in yet. So
Sean Wilson, is making $570,000.
Okay.
A 3-year, $1.7 million. Excuse me. So he's locked in for 3 years. Charles Sims, I'm trying to find. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. That was kind of rude. What were you saying?
No, it's okay. We don't need to go into the details about Charles Sims's contract.
I want to know.
But your point is, you're absolutely right when you say it. The difference in money between Charles Sims and Sean Wilson is, several $100,000, up to about $500,000, which that's a whole other player. You cut the one, and that gives you 2 players. You cut Charles Sims, you potentially have 2 players for his salary that they can bring in after that. So, I think that's why that matters. And I like your point, Ren, that, is that extra spot or that extra salary piece worth it, for the added benefit that you get with, Charles Sims, with a guy who's been there. So you keep looking that up, because I'm just curious if you can actually find that. I haven't been able to find it. But I do have a question for you, Ren. Speaking about all these, okay, before I move on, anything else from the assistants interviews or anything like that? Because it was pretty, as you said, it's pretty bland.
Yeah, it was coaches speaking. Yeah. You heard it all before. Charles Sims' contract is not up.
Yeah,
but I know Greg Allman tweeted it.
Yeah.
So anyway,
which, by the way, the only thing that tells me is his contract's not guaranteed yet. He's not going to be. If he doesn't make the roster, he's probably not making that money, which is probably right. Unlike who was it, Nick Folk last year, who came in with if he was
going to make the roster, and
it didn't matter. So and Roberto Aguayo's money was guaranteed, so they were paying $750,000 to somebody just to sit home. Anyway, talking about the coaching staff here.
All right.
If we go back a couple of months ago, the Buccaneers, we have the debacle of the 2017 season, and all of us were floored to find out that they were bringing back the entire coaching staff, not just Dirk Cutter, not just Mike Smith, the entire coaching staff, and they picked up the options on everybody's contract.
Right.
And then a couple of weeks later, about 4 weeks after that, we found out that they let Jay Hayes go. They brought in Brinson Buckner. He's the only change to the entire coaching staff. After getting to listen to these guys' interviews, after where we are now with the team, how do we feel about this coaching staff?
Well, since the access is so limited to them, it's hard to really judge. There was a lot of talk for George Warhop's head after last year because the offensive line underperformed. Jay Hayes was probably top of everyone's list.
Nate Katzer was another one.
I was just going there. The special teams coach, people were like, those were the 3 guys that if you felt like you needed to change. But the DB's coach, who are they? Moxie and because they sort of share the DB duties. Like one's a safety and one's D-backs and one's cornerbacks. Is the way they do it. But like those guys get passes, but besides Brent Grimes, they're not very good.
Yeah.
It's hard to argue that John Hoke.
Yeah.
John Hoke and Brett Maxey, what I call Moxie, like the soda in the 60s. Grab a Moxie. Anyway, those guys sort of got a pass. No one talked about them. And you only get to talk to them for a little, we don't get to talk. You'll get to hear from them for a little bit. Everything else you got to hear either through Dirk Cutter or Mike Smith. And now we'll get to hear through Todd Monken, offensive coordinator. And those are the three guys you're going to hear. And if the beat reporters can't get them to talk about one of their assistant coaches, then we don't really know what they're doing. Right. Hard Knocks was pretty much the only little window we got to see about how they are in a day-to-day. I guess how they run their practices day to day, and with their players day to day.
Meeting rooms, which apparently all they're doing is making Siri do stupid jokes.
Yeah, yeah, but they focus mostly on Dirk and they focus mostly on Mike Smith. Like you really did. There's a little bit about Jay Hayes, but it was just but it was nothing about coaching. Right. It was like, look, the flag's not moving. It's going to be hot. Like that was it. So we didn't get to sort of see that stuff. So overall, if you look at the roster and then you see the record last year, the coach has got to get some of the blame. Now, who gets it? I don't know. And then, the Bucs had a lot of tough luck last year too, but I'm not really big into making excuses. You have to adapt and overcome. So, people keep saying it's a make it or break it year. I think it is for Dirk Cutter and the coaching staff. I don't think it's for Jason Light at all. But it all depends on what happens. Like if the Bucs don't make the playoffs, I don't think they clean house. It could be like all the defense's fault, or maybe the defense plays great and it's all the offense's fault. And then they fire Dirk and make Mike Smith head coach, or Dirk. They have to talk Dirk and that's what I believe happened. I believe that they picked up the option and it took Jason Light those weeks later, and I don't know how many times they talked, but I think Jason Light had to talk Dirk Cutter into firing Jay Hayes. That's my feeling. So next year it doesn't mean they're going to clean house. And being an NFL coach is a lot about nepotism. Who you've worked with before, who you've played with before. Like Kyle Fulton, why is he in the Bucs? Why is he the Bucs wide receiver coach? Because Dirk Cutter coached him at Arizona State. It's all about who you've coached with, who you've played with, and so that's how it works. So if both these guys, if one of those guys goes, I'm talking about Cutter and Smith, and one stays, then probably their coaches on that side of the ball are going to stay as well. It's just, we don't know. So how do I feel? Have I answered the question yet? Nope. How do I feel about the coaching staff? Honest answer. I think that Cutter could have been more creative last year. I think Mike Smith. I feel that Mike Smith doesn't know how to communicate his defense to his players. Because this is the third year in the defense, and this will be the third year in the defense, and they're still talking about we got to get on the same page. We got to get on the same page.
That's a good point.
I asked that. I caught a little flack. I went to the Pewter Report bowling event where they had Chris Conti, Alan Cross, and Darius Taylor there, and there was a little Q&A, and Bucs sideline guy TJ Reeves was sort of hosting it for him, which was nice of him to do, and he talked to him a little bit, and they talked, and then he opened up the floor to questions, and he's like, "Anybody got a question?" And no one raised their hand, and then Travis fan of the year, Travis. Like TJ's like, I know Travis, my man back there. You got a question? Travis like, no, I'm good. And everyone's standing there, so I'm like, okay. I'm like, I knew what I was going to ask. I didn't want to open with it, but I rose my hand. I'm like, yeah. And that's basically what I said. I'm like, hey, this is your guys' third year. You've had some interviews, and every defensive player, I keep hearing you guys get on the same page. Like, this is supposed to be fixed during the bye week when the defense carried the team with that 5-game win streak. We heard, and then you come back to training camp last year, and Mike Smith's like, oh, you guys were on, addition, and now we're doing trigonometry. And I'm like, well, what happened? Like, why is this still, like, explain to me. I'm just a dumb fan. Explain to me how you still are talking about getting on the same page of communication. And Adarius Taylor's put his head down and wouldn't look at me. And Chris Conti, and he coach speak me, player speak me. Well, there's a lot of moving pieces to the defense and blah, 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 blah. But I didn't let it go. So
hold the feet to the fire, Ren.
Yeah, I was like, okay, well, how about where's the breakdown mainly coming from? Is it coming from the booth to you guys? Is it coming from whoever's trying to get it from the booth and explain it to the rest of the players? Are like the DBs getting it and the linebackers missing it? And he just sort of gave me coach speak again. And then Mark Cook from Pewter Report's like, Jesus. He's like, can we get some softball questions? Like, this is a charity event. And then they proceeded to give me some ribbing after the Q&A, and Derek Fournier was laughing at me, and Cook was calling me Geraldo Rivera. Nice. And then I went up to Trevor, and I was like, was that a little too much? He's like, yeah. He's like, yeah. That was a little too much. I'm like, So, like, I apologized to the guys from Pewter Report, Scott Reynolds, Trevor, and, I wasn't like, oh, God, so sorry. I'm like, hey, man, sorry. And then I was actually walking back inside when Conti, Cross, and Taylor were leaving. I'm like, sorry, guys, and they didn't care. They're like, yeah, no problem. Like, they laughed. They're like, huh, no problem, man. And, like, they could – I was a little mosquito in their way as they're walking out to their cars. Like, yeah. Like, they weren't mean or anything, but yeah, they could care less about what I like. They were not mad or offended. They were just like, meh, okay. Like, I'm going grocery shopping now. Leave me alone, or whatever they were doing.
Then all of a sudden, Rent's following him. He's going to catch him up in the grocery aisle.
So what do you think about this head of broccoli, and why aren't you exactly where communication is breaking down?
Right.
Like, is it written in Sanskrit? Like, tell me, like, why haven't you guys got this yet?
Darius, why did you duck your head?
Yeah, he did not look up.
So I wasn't there. So just hearing this story, and I try not to assign motives to people when they do stuff. I really do. But you hear that, and I just go, sounds like he hung his head because he has the same question. Like, no,
it was like just more like, I could be reading into this too. It just be because I do that too. I notice that when I'm in like sort of like let's see, like a work environment, and they like, hey, everyone come in at like 9. Like, I work in restaurants a lot, restaurant and bars, so you can't just like, hey, everybody, grab your pen and pad and meet in the conference room. We're gonna have a meeting. Like, it doesn't work that way. It's like, hey, everybody's got to be here at 9 a.m. We're having like a restaurant meeting or a bar meeting. And it's like, what? 9 a.m.? Okay. So, but when I go to those things, a lot of times, like, I just sort of have, like, my head down because I don't want to be there and I want it to be over. Like, I'm not going to ask a question. I'm not going to make eye contact with anybody. Like, if I act like I'm not here, it'll get over as soon as possible. So it could have been a little bit of that. It could have been that, he didn't want to answer the question. But I definitely didn't feel it was like, like he was like, oh shit, like, yeah, why, like, why is that? Hope he doesn't ask me that question, or I'm glad Chris fielded it. It was none of that stuff. It was just, I just noticed because, of course, Alan Cross is not being asked the question. So when Chris gave me his coaching speak, I'm like, I was looking over to Adarius to kind of like, give him the eye contact and cut Chris off and be like, so like, you played Adarius the last couple games where you broke your leg, you got in there, you're doing well, you've always, had more tackles and plays you're actually in the game. Like, you seem to get it.
Right.
Like, why doesn't Chris Connick? Why doesn't Chris Connick get it?
Right.
But he was having none of it. He was just like, like, like he maybe he was playing on his phone. Who knows?
Yeah. I'm not answering that question. So all of that to say, how do you actually feel about the coaches?
I'm apprehensive. Like, I like Monken being able to script the offense. Remember before that actually happened, I said my dream would be Cutter call the plays from 20 to 20, and then we get inside the 20, have Monken call the plays. Well, it looks like that Monken's going to have like more votes and actually going to script the Dirk's going to still call the plays, but there might be a little more imagination to it because at some points Dirk Cutter was a little stubborn, as in like instead of, hey, maybe this guy doesn't do that this well, maybe we shouldn't run this play against this team, to, hey, I know this play will work against this team or this defense, you just have to execute it. Mm-hmm. Instead of like, hey, but maybe you're putting them in a position where they're not the best at. Like, you got to do this, but I really do this and this better. Yeah, but against this defense, you got to do this. I felt like maybe a little too much of that. And then, like I said, I'm apprehensive. I keep repeating myself about the communication thing. It's just we will see. But I'm hopeful. I like the move they've made in the offseason. And as a Buccaneer fan and a hopeless romantic, hope it works out. Works out, man.
Yeah, I'm with you on a lot of that. I think if I can sum up a little bit about how I'm feeling about this team, or the coaching staff anyway, is just from listening to these guys, I get the feeling that a lot of them, not Mark Duffner, who's the linebackers coach, not him, but the rest of them, it's kind of like, we didn't have Mike Smith especially. We didn't have the horses. They didn't have what they were really looking for as far as players.
That's a very good point.
They were limited in what they could do, and even then, and we heard people say this a lot last year. We heard the players say this a lot last year. It's not the coaches, it's the players. The players aren't executing what the coaches are putting in front of us. The coaches are doing their job. I kind of got the feeling listening to these interviews that the coaches were like, hey, we finally got some people this time. We finally got some people who have right attitudes this time. So, but with you, I have maintained that I am reserving all judgment on everything until week 6 of the season.
Right.
And that's going to include the coaching staff. I might be on a slightly more hopeful side of this than you are, Ren, as far as the coaches go. Like, let's see what they can do when they actually have some of the right people with the right attitude in there. And we'll see. We'll see where they go.
That was a little more like, we always try to spin it on a positive thing for the Bucs, but I felt like I was rambling. I didn't answer the question, and like I really wanted to answer the question. It was just like, I think Dirk needs to be more imaginative, and Mike Smith needs to somehow communicate better.
Yes.
So I don't want to make it sound like I'm down on the coaching staff. I'm very hopeful for the coaching staff, and I think they're with their track record. You think they can do it. So, but I am a little scared about what might happen. 0-3 is a very big possibility.
Listen, it's a legit thing when you sit back and you go, this was a coaching staff that led the team to 5-11 last year, and there was one change. One major change on the coaching staff. Like, a couple of people got shuffled around, but there was only one real change. So, as far as personnel goes, so it's a legit thing. And again, I'm reserving actual judgment till about week 6. But I like the moves.
Are we going to call the pod that week Judgment Day?
That's probably a fun idea.
Instead of the opening music, we'll do the Terminator music.
Right. We'll watch the chase sequence from Terminator 2, where he's running through. Anyway, or maybe we'll just watch that Game of Thrones episode where they dubbed it after the T2. You know what I'm talking about? No, you're looking at me weird. Okay. It's all right. We'll talk about it later.
I knew the Terminator 2 thing, but it wasn't really a run. You're talking about the semi-motorcycle scene, right? Semi-truck motorcycle scene?
Yeah, no, it's like whenever he's running, like it's. Did you watch Game of Thrones? You watched Game of Thrones this last year.
Yeah.
There was that episode where Arya was being chased like through the city, and the director basically lifted T2 and made it that scene.
Oh, I didn't notice that.
Yeah. Go back and watch it. You'll see it there. So, and we'll talk about that more on our new Game of Thrones podcast.
Because there's none of those. There's none of those out there.
Right. Well, all right, as we wrap up the show here, folks, I did want to let you guys know that there was one other topic that we did talk about tonight, Ren, but it got edited out of the final episode of tonight. However, it was a really important topic that we were discussing, and it got really long while we were recording it, and it got a little bit more political, a little less having to do with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers specifically than what we would like to do with this podcast, with the PewterCast. However, the content of what we did, we were talking about the new kneeling policy by the NFL. That content, it actually became really a good bit for another podcast that I do. It's my own personal podcast, Brent Allen Live, the podcast, where we talk about political things and things that really go along with today's age. So if you guys want to check that out, it actually is there in its entirety at the other podcast, at Brent Allen Live. If you guys want to go over there and talk about it, it's kind of a follow-up, a part 2 to another episode that I did last year talking about the same topic. So you guys make sure you go check that out. It was a good conversation, just not right for this podcast. Very, very much right for that one over there. Well, that, I guess, is going to wrap up this episode, and this is where we want to turn it all back on you guys, our fellow fans. What are your thoughts on our thoughts? You can find us on Twitter at ThePewterCast, or shoot us a message over at Facebook.com/ThePewterCast. Or if you're a little more long-winded than just, the 280 characters or whatever, much like Ren is, you can shoot us an email to ThePewterCast@gmail.com. Ren, where can the fine folks out there find you on the internet?
You know just as well as I do, Brent. It's about the way you phrase the question. It's just as important as the question. He's making fun of me, my Rick Stroud email again. You can find me on Twitter, easiest way. I rarely use Facebook anymore. Facebook is dead. At Rendax, REN_DAXT. I'm always down to talk Buccaneers football. And I'd like to say that I owe Chris and Chef a conversation in the DMs, because I feel like they've been DMing me and I have not been responding. So coming soon, guys.
And if you guys want to find me personally, you can find me at Brent Allen Live across all of the social medias. And once again, the show is at ThePewterCast on Twitter, Facebook.com/ThePewterCast, or ThePewterCast@gmail.com. And don't forget to support us at Patreon.com/ThePewterCast. Get all kinds of cool stuff. Well, guys, that's going to wrap us up for this show. And until next time, off-season here, we're right smack dab. We're not even in the middle of it, Ren. It's starting to wind down. We're starting to get closer to more and more action as we barrel in towards training camp. So just a little while longer, folks. But until next time, go Bucs.